The narcissist in your life has already sold their soul to the devil, and you just witnessed the transaction happen right in front of you without even knowing it. Think about the last time they hurt you. Remember how effortlessly they shifted the blame onto you? How they managed to make you feel like you were the crazy one for bringing up their behavior? That was beyond manipulation. That was someone intentionally operating from a place where their spiritual connection has been severed, where divine truth itself has been sacrificed for that kind of control they were establishing. You were watching someone who has already made the ultimate trade with darkness, someone who has turned their back on the light of their soul. Maybe it was when they promised to change after a massive fight, looked you dead in the eyes, and you saw those black eyes without any remorse. Maybe it was when they took credit for your achievements while simultaneously undermining your confidence. Maybe it was that chilling moment when you realized they could watch you cry and feel absolutely nothing, as if their heart had been spiritually sealed. These are not just random acts of cruelty. This is not just psychological. These are predictable behaviors of someone whose soul has been compromised. Someone who has entered into the realm of darkness, where only the demonic forces rule. I'm not saying all of this just to create hype. This is true spiritual warfare. And once you understand it, everything about their behavior starts to make perfect sense. Hi, I am Samir, understanding narcissistic manipulation, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. Welcome to my channel. Let's understand how a narcissist sells their soul to the devil. Now, I know what you're thinking. Samir, are we talking about literal devils and supernatural forces today? I won't answer in yes or no. Instead, what I'm about to share with you is going to make you see every interaction you have ever had with them in your life completely differently. You are going to understand why they seem so calculating, why they can hurt you without any remorse, and why they always seem to have this uncanny ability to manipulate situations to their advantage. You are going to see how they have disconnected from the divine spark within them, and how that spiritual disconnection creates the cold, calculating person you have always dealt with. Aine, how come? Think about this. Somebody can look straight into your eyes with such conviction and then say you are crazy, make you question your memory. How can somebody apologize so eloquently, if they do one day, and then repeat the same hurtful behavior the next day, as if the apology was never said? How is it possible that somebody can operate by completely different rules than the rest of humanity? Someone who seems to lack the basic spiritual compass that guides most people. That is because they are demonic at their core. Whether you like this or not, whether you are a believer or not, this is the truth. The narcissist has a spiritual contract with darkness. The narcissist has entered into a spiritual contract that fundamentally changes how they interact with divine truth itself. This is not just about somebody who would be concerned with that person. This is about someone who has made a conscious choice to prioritize their false self over their soul's connection to higher truth. When I say they have made a deal with the devil, I'm talking about the pivotal moment when they decided that being spiritually authentic was too risky, too vulnerable, and too dangerous. So, what did they do? They created this elaborate facade, this false version of themselves that feels safer and more powerful. But maintaining this facade requires them to make spiritual sacrifices. That would horrify you and me. That would horrify most souls. You see, when I talk about a narcissist making a deal with the devil, I'm talking about a spiritual contract they make with the darkest aspects of their own being. And this contract gets signed the moment they decide that their ego is more important than their soul. This is the moment they choose the illusion of earthly power over genuine divine connection. This is when they sell their capacity for spiritual love in exchange for worldly power and control. Let me paint to you a picture of how the spiritual transaction actually happens. Picture a soul who grows up in an environment where their divine worth is made conditional. Maybe they only receive love when they are perfect. Maybe they only feel safe when they are in control. Maybe they learn that spiritual vulnerability equals danger. So, what do? They create this spiritual armor, this false version of themselves that feels untouchable by divine truth. But creating this false self requires them to make their first deal with spiritual darkness. They have to agree to disconnect from their authentic soul. They have to promise to never show their true authentic self, their true divine nature. They have to commit to always being right, always being superior, better than others, and always being in control. And what is the prize, you ask? They give up their ability to truly connect with other people, on a spiritual as well as on an emotional level. Now, you may be wondering, why would any soul make such a terrible trade? The answer lies in spiritual survival. In that moment, disconnecting from their authentic self feels like the only way to protect their wounded soul. The narcissist looks at this deal and thinks they are getting divine power without divine responsibility. They think they are going to get unlimited adamantium, control, or power over others. They think they found the shortcut to superiority without doing the inner work. In simple words, they choose easy override. And what I'm sharing with you is not a justification. It is an explanation. Because most survivors who experience childhood trauma, who experience abuse, who are not treated well, end up being empaths, right? Had trauma been the cause, then every child of a narcissistic parent would have turned into an evil monster. But that rarely happens. It's all about the choice. It's all about the sacrifice they make. It's all about what they choose to repeat and reinforce. And that is what becomes their character, which is what we call the consequences of the dark deal, personality. Just like any deal with dark forces, with demons, the spiritual terms get worse over time. What starts as a simple trade turns into a lifetime of escalating spiritual debt. Let me show you how this progression actually unfolds on a soul level. 1. The first spiritual payment is their divine authenticity. We all have it. They can no longer access their real soul or their true divine purpose. Everything becomes a performance. Every interaction becomes a transaction, because everything is transactional. Every relationship becomes a tool for feeding their ego rather than nourishing their spirit. 2. The second spiritual payment is their divine empathy. We all have that as well. To maintain this false self, they have to shut down their ability to truly feel what others experience. They cannot afford to care about your pain, your suffering, because acknowledging your agony may reveal the spiritual wound they're hiding from themselves. 3. The third spiritual payment is their inner peace. Living disconnected from your soul is spiritually exhausting. It comes at a cost. The narcissist has to constantly guard against any moment of genuine connection, which may crack the facade. That's the reason why they hate vulnerability. They become extremely paranoid that someone you in this case, may see through to their wounded soul. And that's why you become their worst nightmare the moment you do. When the narcissist knows you know, what do? They start stepping back. They start discarding you. They start ghosting you because they know they have no power over you anymore. And they feel really ashamed of themselves. More so, they feel like a failure. 4. The fourth spiritual payment is their divine relationships. Real intimacy becomes impossible because intimacy requires soul-level vulnerability, and vulnerability is exactly what they traded away in their deal with the devil. Yes, they are surrounded by people, but spiritually isolated from every soul around them. 5. And finally, the ultimate spiritual payment is their connection to divine truth itself. They become so invested in their false narrative, in their false self, that they lose the ability to distinguish between spiritual truth and their illusions. They start believing their own lies, self-gaslighting. They become trapped in a spiritual prison of their own making, cut off from the light of divine wisdom. You have seen how they can lie with complete conviction. Where does that come from? It's as if they have lost their connection to truthfulness. You have witnessed how they can hurt you and then act like nothing happened. Their soul is dead. Their conscience has been silenced. They did it to themselves, nobody else. You have experienced how they can twist reality to make you question your own intuition and spiritual perceptions, your discernment. This is because they are operating from this place where they have already shunned light and made the dark trade. They've already chosen their false ego, their false self, over their authentic soul. They're dead. There is nobody that you can save. The decision has been made. They are going to maintain this false self at any cost because it's the most important thing to them. Should I say, it's the only thing they have left. If that is taken away, then they will stop existing. Zero. Nothingness. Pure nothingness. And that is worse than death to a narcissist. You need to understand, you're dealing with someone who is committed to spiritual deception. When not talking to their authentic soul, it's not getting through. You're talking to a carefully constructed character who will say whatever they need to say to maintain control of the spiritual narrative. You need to accept this because this understanding will give you clarity. When you allow yourself to fully understand that the narcissist has chosen delusions over divine reality, you will stop expecting them to suddenly become spiritually reasonable or to accept God. When you understand that they have traded their soul's empathy for everything that is so temporary, you will stop expecting them to care about how their actions affect your spirit because they do not care. Empowerment and moving forward. Make a choice that changes your future. Let it help you love yourself, your truth, your voice, and everything that you stand for. For it is when you are home, when you are one with self, and when you truly appreciate your divineness, you will be able to live your purpose and thrive in the realest sense possible. Conclusion: embrace your healing journey. With that, let's bring this episode to an end. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I will talk to you in the next one. Until then, as always, let the healing begin.